I think the Doctor Doom RDJ plan goes back far further than people believe. In fact, new evidence suggests that it was going to be something put into the multiverse of madness, which is crazy.
Oh my God!
So in this video, let's talk about all the evidence. Let's talk about why people are starting to believe that this plan is way older than we think. And I'm gonna say, like, I just want to throw this out here just as a prediction. I'm gonna go ahead and say that I predict Marvel will uncover all of this for the marketing. Like, I think they're gonna like lean into this idea. And when I say the idea, I am talking about Robert Downey Jr.'s return to Marvel as Victor Von Doom instead of Tony Stark, which I continue to believe is actually going to retcon the character of RDJ's Iron Man. Trust me, this shit is gonna blow your fucking mind. So take a look at this, and I want to shout out Fandom Wire here for posting this on their Twitter account. They posted this last year, and this is leaked concept art from the Multiverse of Madness, which seems to show Stephen Strange fighting against Victor Von Doom. Now, you might just say, okay, that's just some random concept art. Maybe they were playing around with having a variant of Doom that was going to be Sorcerer Supreme, because he does look to have the same kind of tendril cape, you know, collar things that the Doctor Doom that became the Sorcerer Supreme had in the comic books recently. And it's totally fair to draw that conclusion, because ever since Kevin Feige took over as CCO of Marvel Entertainment overall, he has pushed with the publisher Dan Buckley a lot of synergy between Marvel Comics and the MCU. And in fact, editor-in-chiefs and people at Marvel have actually stated how they view Marvel Comics as about 5 years ahead of content that could be coming to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And this has worked to a varying degree. I mean, some of the stuff has been cooler than other stuff, and I think we all realize that Marvel's done a lot of changing over the past couple of years. But the main question is, how long were they planning this Robert Downey Jr. Doctor Doom thing? Because there's this perception out there that this was like a Hail Mary, right? This was like something they sort of pulled out of their ass because they were like, yo, nobody likes Kang and Jonathan Majors got in trouble. What are we gonna do?
No, there's no problem.
So think about all of that and go back to this concept art here. What makes this even more interesting is the fact that there were so many rumors of an evil Tony Stark or an evil Iron Man in this Multiverse of Madness film. I myself got caught up in the Tom Cruise Iron Man rumors, and in fact, I was so convinced that Tom Cruise Iron Man was going to be in this movie, I actually lost a $500 bet to Skylar Schuler from the Diz Insider, and I paid that shit because a Lannister always pays his debts. And yeah, I paid Brandon Davis too $500 because Superman made more money than Fantastic Four. I'm not good at bets, dude. Now, I'm just gonna tell you this, guys. One of the reasons I was so convinced that Tom Cruise Iron Man was gonna be in this movie is because I literally saw a casting grid that had Tom Cruise on it for evil version of Iron Man. Like, I'm dead ass. I saw that. I don't know whether the document was fake or maybe this was something going around that Marvel just abandoned. But now when I look at this concept art here of Stephen Strange fighting against the Doctor Doom variant, it's like, oh man, maybe there was something to this whole evil Iron Man thing. And there were other people like My Time to Shine Hello that were reporting that it was actually going to be a variant of Obadiah Stane, that it was actually not going to be Tony Stark, but it was going to be Obadiah. And in this 838 version of the universe, he wins Iron Man 1, takes over, and just then does mostly all the things that you would think Tony Stark would do. And we've seen concept art of that. There's even an Ironmonger looking guy in some of the concept art for Multiverse of Madness. This was, I think, a version of the Illuminati that was going to have Boulder the Brave. And the thing that's really funny is I remember at that time, because like I get hyper fixated on stuff and I would not let the Tom Cruise Iron Man thing go. You probably remember the thumbnails. You probably remember me talking about it in videos and streams. But because I was talking about it so much, some other people had hit me up, and you know, you get hit up a lot when you make content like this and you're never really sure, like, do these people know what they're talking about? Are they just trying to lie to me, throw me off the scent? But I did have several people reach out to me and say, it's not Tom Cruise, it's going to be Robert Downey Jr., and there's something to this evil Iron Man thing. Now, what makes this even more interesting is because of a lot of the new rumors that we have about RDJ's Doctor Doom and some of the motivations he's gonna have in Avengers Doomsday into Avengers Secret Wars, it gives a greater context for some of the things that were going on in the Multiverse of Madness. One thing I want to point out is that in the 838 universe, Stephen Strange comes into that universe like 4 to 5 years before before he normally would. This is denoted by Christine Palmer, who is going over the differences between his injuries and his broken hands and the 838 Stephen Strange's similar or same injuries. Now, it's also crazy because we know they defeated Thanos, and it seems as though Thanos did attack in a similar way to what we get in 616, but they're able to defeat him with the Book of Vishanti using magic and the Illuminati. They all just go to Titan and whoop Thanos' ass. And even though we don't see an Iron Man in any of this movie, there's enough evidence to suggest that there were several versions of an evil Iron Man that were going to make their way into 838. And another thing that's really weird about 838 is they are utilizing magic and technology. This is most on display again with Christine Palmer when she has the handcuffs that use the sands of Vishanti and technology to stop Stephen from being able to use magic and actually keep these handcuffs on him. We also know that there are Ultron bots here, and everybody assumes that these Ultron bots were created by a Tony Stark or maybe the Obadiah Stane, and it's just because that's what happened in 616. And again, there's so many similarities between 838 and 616. So most people do imagine that maybe the Tom Cruise Iron Man or an evil Iron Man that was Robert Downey Jr. was going to have that missing seat with all of the Illuminati. But what's even more crazy is thinking about the Ultron bots themselves. These Ultron drones glowed seemingly using magic as opposed to the strict technological version of the Ultron drones that we saw in our 616 Age of Ultron movie. And that could actually explain why they didn't rebel and take over, because they were created with magic, and the magic somewhat held the AI technology together. But now go back to the image of that Doctor Doom and Stephen Strange fighting against him. Think about the Ultron drones, and then think about the fact that 838 was using magic and technology. And what makes it even more crazy for me is the fact that the Russo brothers recently admitted in an interview that there was a whole year before they accepted the job for Doomsday and Secret Wars. They described being approached by Kevin Feige about this whole Doctor Doom idea. Like, they said that, meaning even a year before they came on board, which is likely a whole year before last July when it was announced, Kevin Feige already had the Doctor Doom idea. And where this gets weird is I've actually been told that this idea was likely just called Evil Tony Stark and a sort of twisted dark version of Tony Stark behind the scenes. Marvel's Parliament, which is basically like their writers group, that's the upper echelon of creatives and executives that kind of control the sort of overall canon and story of Marvel. Parliament has been internally discussing RDJ's return as an evil Iron Man or a Doctor Doom for years and years and years. And on top of that, Alex Perez did say that in the original version of the Kang Dynasty, it was going to be revealed that Victor Von Doom was one of those things that He Who Remains had removed from the timeline, along with the X-Men. And Alex suggests that you were going to get this reveal and this Doctor Doom character put into Secret Wars, but really that was sort of just a setup for him being the main villain of the mutant saga. And I have reason to believe that that was absolutely real, and it was going to be Downey the entire time. And basically, you were going to have Doctor Doom and RDJ, and I think even this big coming retcon of Tony Stark. In the original version, it was going to be revealed and connected to the Kangs and He Who Remains and breaking that cycle free. But I do believe the idea of Doctor Doom and really the idea of Tony Stark not actually being Tony Stark was going to be explored in the Kang Dynasty and in Secret Wars, and now it still is, but they've just taken what was going to be sort of an end cap story and a setup for the next saga, and they've brought it to the forefront. It is going to happen right now. And this would explain why Jeff Snyder in 2022, after we get the whole Daredevil Born Again delay and that huge Tatiana Siegel article that hints that Doctor Doom is coming, and remember, Joanna Robinson hints on her podcast that Doctor Doom is likely coming, and then Jeff Snyder says that according to his best source ever, Doctor Doom was always the villain of Secret Wars. Not a villain, but the villain of Secret Wars. And I think, considering all of that shit, it's probably the case that Michael Waldron, who by the way was an absolute workhorse for Marvel Studios coming out of the Endgame era going into Loki season 1, I've seen interviews where Waldron discusses seeing early cuts of Endgame before the visual effects were completed, and that informs his writing for Loki, and then of course that informs his writing for Multiverse of Madness. And Elizabeth Olsen has said they did 17 different drafts, man. They were writing and working all sorts of different versions, but I think what Marvel was really trying to decide was whether or not they wanted to start leaking out this Doctor Doom thing, this evil Tony Stark thing, right then and there. And I think they decided not to. I think they decided to kind of keep that as a surprise. And I believe the original intention of what Marvel was going to execute with the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars was going to sort of have this thing become an incredible reveal, this shocking realization about our Iron Man and about who he really was. And then we would see who he really was, sort of in Secret Wars and then in the next saga. And again, I want to explain that I think Marvel has all this info. I think there's meetings, I think there's stuff on whiteboards, and I think that when we get closer to Doomsday, or maybe when we get to Secret Wars or whatever, this is going to be in the marketing. Kevin Feige is going to talk about this idea that they had maybe all the way back in Age of Ultron time, because that's when the Russos really joined Parliament and start cooking for Avengers Endgame and Infinity War and whatnot. And remember, the Russos were the ones that kept talking about Secret Wars. They talked about it before Kevin Feige. They talked about it before anybody. They were really excited, and they always linked it to getting the Fox X-Men characters back. And what I'm telling you is, I think this big meta idea to have the Infinity Saga itself be a false reality and sort of meta-contextually connect that to why all of the Marvel content in live action for the past 60 years has not represented the world of Marvel Comics. I think that idea is 5 years old, maybe 10 years old. That idea might be 17 years old. And I will not be surprised if Marvel starts dropping the receipts really, really soon to show that this is not some last minute ass pull. This is a retcon that they've been thinking about for years and years and years. Or maybe I'm wrong and they just pulled it out their ass. I guess we're gonna find out. Let me know what you think about this theory in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed the video. And as I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day. And I'll see you in the next video.